entrepreneur. This is Mark Newsom, Mr. Marketing. Welcome to this special presentation entitled 3 Extremely Profitable Reasons Why Your Website that generates very little free traffic can and should still be considered a very valuable capital asset, Part 2. Ladies and gentlemen, as you previously discovered in Part 1 of this series, and if this is your first time seeing this particular video, there is a Part 1, so you want to watch that first and then come back and watch this, and it'll make a whole lot more sense on a whole lot more levels. But anyway, as you discovered in Part 1, just because you have a website that doesn't necessarily generate a whole lot of free traffic, what some people call organic traffic, ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't mean that it can't or isn't an extremely valuable capital asset, as you're going to see in just a moment. So as you recall, ladies and gentlemen, Part 1, a very famous online internet marketing guru, if you will, gentleman who makes no bones about the fact that he makes millions of dollars on and offline. He's a very successful businessman. He was catching some flack because he has a website, and some of these SEO specialists, these men and women who want to sell their search engine optimization prowess and get our websites ranked high on the first page of Google, they became aware of one particular site the guy has, and sometimes this site is on page 2 and sometimes it may fall down as far as page 4. So they take great bones of pointing out that this particular guru, he's not credible, because they say, hey, look at this website. That's proof positive that he isn't crushing it on the internet as much as he claims, and he certainly doesn't know anything about search engine optimization. So as a counter to that, on a private webinar recently, this guru, just to sort of clear things up and to try to point out how you have to learn how to look at things from a marketing standpoint, here's what he did. He points out that this particular website that they love to bash him about, he decided to pull back the curtains for this private audience and show them kind of what was going on, so they'd get a feel for the fact of why he didn't care what these people were talking about. So here's what he disclosed, ladies and gentlemen. About every 90 days, give or take, this particular website, it generates very little free traffic. In other words, he's not using pay-per-click or anything, and he's not trying to search engine optimize the site any more than it already is. It still manages to generate about every 90 days one paid speaking engagement. And this guy's either going to get $10,000 as an upfront speaking fee, or he's going to get $20,000. That's the first thing. Now, he'll get the higher amount, $20,000, if he's the main keynote speaker. Otherwise, he's going to get about $10,000. Now, here's the next thing we mentioned. The guy routinely holds a pre-event private breakout session where he'll normally let a maximum of about 50 people. They pay an extra $100. That's on top of the money they paid, to come to the event. They come to hear him speak for 90 minutes in no holds barred Q&A session about whatever he's speaking about at that particular event. And, they can pick the guy's brain. And remember, this guy normally charges, if you were to pay him to consult, he's $1,000 an hour, a minimum of 3 hours. So they look at $100 to sit in a room for 90 minutes with this guy and pick his brain. They see that as a bargain, and it is. Now, here's what. Now, stop and look at where we are right now already. Just that amount, ladies and gentlemen, is that not enough? The $10,000 up front, 50 people at an extra $100 each. Is that not enough to pay for web hosting, state-of-the-art shopping cart, and the top email service provider, whichever one you happen to choose? Absolutely. But here's what these SEO people don't see. Here's the next thing he does. He records a special 90-minute presentation. Surprise. And of course, everybody that paid, these 50 people that paid, they get a free copy. But the rest of the workshop attendees that want to, they can have a copy for just $97. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, Mark, they're going to get the same price as these people? Yeah, but there's some other stuff we'll cover in Part 3, because this is going to blow it out of the park. You'll see. But anyway, the guy sells typically another 100 copies at $97, and he grosses another $9,700. Now, again, this is on a website that the SEO people take great pains in bashing this guy all over the internet. Ha ha ha. Look at this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And like he likes to say, this one website probably makes more than they make in a whole year. One website, one niche. But now, let me just stop and say something here, ladies and gentlemen. If you were to attempt to use the strategies that you just say laid out right here, you don't have to sell your copy at 97 bucks. What if you sell an extra 50 copies at $37? It's still found money. And that's what you have to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen. This guy didn't start out, when he first started out online, he wasn't doing this sort of thing. But over time, he's grown and matured. He's become a much better marketer. But here's the other thing I want to point out that he does. Typically, when he gets those 50 people in a room, 20% of them, or 10 people, guess what? They will buy a master resale license that normally would cost $2,500. He lets them have it for $1,000. So they recognize the fact that this is 60% off the normal retail rate. Well, 10 more people at $1,000 each. That's an additional $10,000. Entrepreneur, do you see how incredibly profitable this so-called website that generates very little organic traffic is really worth to this guy, and potentially to you and I? Now here's the other thing. As we said, he also holds his private lunch session where he lets 10 more people, and they get to attend and ask any questions they want. And he's not, now just so you know, they're not in a restaurant or something. They actually stay at the facility, and he just brings in pizza and wings and soda. And again, it's recorded, and this guy gets another $1,000 because 10 people at $100 each on top of that. Now, the people who bought the master's license, we're going to cover something else in part 3 that you'll see. I don't want to convolute this thing too much. But let's take a look, ladies and gentlemen, at where we are, just to refresh your memory. First of all, the guy gets between 10 and 20 grand to come to this event and speak. Let's just go with 10 grand. So that's his first form of profit. Even if that's all he did, you have to admit that's great money. Next thing he does is he's going to let 50 people attend a special private 90-minute no-holds-barred workshop, and they spend $100 each. So he grosses an additional $5,000. Now, the next thing the guy does is he's going to sell 10 people that attend his breakout session a $1,000 master resale license that typically would cost $2,500 each. So they recognize the value there. That's an additional 10 grand. The guy's going to sell an additional 100 copies of his recordings at $97. And remember, that's the recording of the breakout session. And as I told you, he also records the lunch session. We'll cover that in part 3. But the point is, entrepreneur, I hope you can stop and see why this guy doesn't care what the website generates in terms of traffic. In fact, as he points out, if he were really dead serious about it, he could hire one of these people that are criticizing and put this thing up even further. But he's, as he said, hey, he's perfectly content the way this back end is right now. He's making a ton of money with it. He's perfectly satisfied with it. He doesn't care. So the point that I'm trying to get you to see, ladies and gentlemen, with this video, hopefully, is how just because you have a website that isn't generating a lot of so-called free organic traffic doesn't mean it can't be an extremely valuable capital asset. Now let me just flip this around a whole nother way so you see what we're saying. If you only have 3,000 Twitter followers, but 100 of those followers are some incredibly influential people, and yet here's somebody else laughing saying, look, I got 68,243 Twitter followers, but by and large they're just, no offense, the average Joe and Jane. Who cares? The bottom line is you have assets, and they might be intellectual, they might be contacts, they might be contacts of contacts. When you learn how to cultivate this, you can turn them into an extremely valuable capital asset. And that's the point. And that's what this guy was trying to point out with this website, that it's not about how much traffic the website is generating. It's about the money this guy is making as a result of it. So with that said, For those of you who want to discover how to add an additional 25% more gross profit to your bottom line, do so in the next 90 days or less without having to add any new customers or clients, then ladies and gentlemen, grab your free 9-page special report. Just head over to youcanmarketonlinenow.com/sales because that's where you can get it. This is Mark Newsom, Mr. Marketing. We'll see you again next time on the Marketing Minute.